Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about things to look for when picking a bottle of Spanish wine. So one of the beautiful and sometimes frustrating things about wine is that it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. Even once a wine has been produced and bottled, in the bottle with time, the wine is constantly evolving and changing. So the beautiful and frustrating thing about that is that there's never a 100% guarantee that a wine is going to taste exactly the way you think it's going to taste when you open it. That being said, when talking about Spanish wine, some of these tips can be used for wines from any country in the world. There are a few things to look for or a few things that you can do to try to get as close as possible to a guarantee that the wine that you're picking is a wine that you are going to like. So here are our top tips to look for when picking a bottle of Spanish wine. So the first tip, and this is useful for wines from pretty much all over the world, but today and always in this channel we're talking about Spain, is to just check where the wine region is located. Spain has over 90 official wine regions, what are called DOs, or origin denominations, which makes it very difficult to remember or to know exactly what the wines from each little region taste like, what characteristics they have, because there are many of them. So to simplify, what kind of wine you're picking, one of the things to do is to just look within the country where the wine region is located. Is it further up north? Is it farther down south? Is it on the Atlantic coast? Is it on the Mediterranean coast? These are things that can already help you know what the wine will taste like, what characteristics it will have. So Spain has 3 official climates in which the wine can fall under one of the 3 categories. There are Atlantic style wines, continental style wines, and Mediterranean style wines. So let's start off with Atlantic style wines. These are wines that are produced in a more Atlantic climate, which means it's colder, it rains more often, not as much sunshine, and it has very cold winters, mild summers. So one of the things that means is that the wines will have higher levels of acidity. They'll be lighter bodied as well. They're going to be very aromatic, very floral, very herbaceous, but they're going to be lighter style wines. If you think about maybe Pinot Noirs from Burgundy as an example, wines made in Spain within the Atlantic climate will be much closer to what a French Pinot Noir is. So if that's the kind of wine that you like to drink, you want to look in the regions that are located in that part of the country. Second wine is the Mediterranean style wine from Mediterranean climates. One of the beautiful things about living close to the Mediterranean or on the Mediterranean is that the winters are very mild, the temperatures don't go too low. What that means for the wines is that they don't produce that much acidity. It's a warmer climate, meaning it's going to produce more full-bodied wines with higher levels of alcohol and lower levels of acidity. So if you think maybe Priorat in the north or Jumilla in the south, regions that produce great wines, but wines that are full-bodied, a little more jammy, a little more textured, a little more in your face, more full-bodied wines. If those are the kinds of wines that you like to drink, maybe think a Bordeaux style wine in France as something to compare it to. Those are the wines that you're going to get from the Mediterranean climate, the Mediterranean style wines located on the eastern coast of Spain. Then finally, you have your continental style wines. This is the central part of the country. This is where regions like Rioja and Ribera del Duero are located. And the continental style wines are kind of a balance between the 2 other styles, meaning there are very cold winters, very hot summers. So there's that contrast of the cold and the heat, meaning the wine has good levels of acidity with higher levels of alcohol. These are more medium to full-bodied style wines with a good balance of acidity and sugar, meaning alcohol. So those are the 3 different climates that you have within Spain, and those are the 3 different climates that you can pick wines from that can match the kind of style of wine that you prefer. So the second thing you can do when picking a Spanish wine is looking at the label, and in particular, looking for some keywords that are often on labels of Spanish wine, knowing what they mean, and then being able to make a decision based off of that information. So if the wine has words like crianza, reserva, gran reserva, roble, cremoso, those are words that often indicate the wine has been aged in oak. So in the case of words like crianza, reserva, and gran reserva, the first little tip is to just check the year, the vintage year. The older, the better. Let's use the region of Rioja as an example. Rioja is the region that probably uses these words the most. They're the ones that created that vocabulary for Spanish wine, crianza, reserva, and gran reserva. What it means in Rioja is the amount of time that the wine has been aged for before being released to the market. So a crianza, for example, has a 3-year aging period minimum. A reserva has a 4-year aging period, and a gran reserva has a 5-year aging period. So those aging periods are a mix of time in the oak casks and time in the bottle before being released. So crianza is a younger wine, gran reserva is an older wine. So for the most part, other regions also use those same words. The aging time will be a little bit different to what they are in Rioja. But for the most part, it's a good indicator of quality if you like those smoky style wines where it's very clear that they have been aged in oak, but they still have some balance. They still have some fruit to it. They still have some freshness to it. Crianza, reserva, and gran reserva, for the most part, is usually a sign that the minimum standard of quality is pretty high. One of the main characteristics of Spanish wine for a long time has been this use of oak. Rioja is the most popular wine region in Spain, and their wines are very characteristic for traditionally being oaky wines. So a lot of other regions in Spain want to try to copy that style, or at least try to trick the consumer into thinking that they're buying a similar wine. So some regions use the same words, crianza, reserva, gran reserva, but a red flag to look for is if the label says roble. Roble means oak. Most of the time, when a wine says roble, the winery is trying to tell you this really tastes like oak. But most of the time, it tastes way too much like oak. It tastes as if someone took essence of oak in a spray bottle and just sprayed it into the wine. And that's pretty much all you're tasting when drinking that wine. And it has a very artificial, very manufactured flavor to it. It doesn't taste natural. It doesn't taste integrated or balanced. So if you see the word roble, unless it's a wine that you know that is good, that you've done some background check on, that you've tasted before, most of the time those are wines you want to avoid. So tip number 3, and this is a tip mostly for the international market, primarily the UK and the United States, is to avoid Spanish wines that are labeled as red blends. So in markets like the United States and the UK, grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Pinot Noir are very popular. People like to consume Californian wines, French wines, wines from other markets that use those grapes, and they are amazing wines. However, most of the wine regions in Spain do not use those grapes at all. And if they do, they use them sparingly. Most of the time, they use natively Spanish grapes or grapes from other parts of the world that adapt much better to the Spanish climate, soil, and landscape. So most of the time, if a wine is marketing itself as having Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and that it's actually a blend of just those 2 grapes, that's a wine that has only been made for the international market to try to get foreign consumers to buy it. What's the problem with that? The problem is it's not a good wine. It's a wine that's made in a hurried fashion, not a lot of attention to detail. It's a wine that just has some of those grapes planted somewhere they're not going to grow in the best conditions, and it's not a great wine. And it's not representative of what Spanish wine is. It's trying to be a cheap copy of good quality wines that are made in other parts of the world. So tip number 4, if you're in the market for white wine, a simple way to approach buying white wine is to just simply avoid the wine regions that are known for red wine. Obviously, there are some exceptions to this. However, as a good rule of thumb, you're just looking to try a Spanish white wine, and you know the regions that are known for red wine, just avoid those. For the most part, the regions that produce the best white wines are not the same regions as the ones that produce the best red wines. So Rioja, Ribera del Duero, Priorat, Toro, those regions are great red wine producing regions. They don't make the best white wines. You want to look for a region that specializes in producing white wines. In Spain, that's where you'll get the best quality products. So a region like Rías Baixas or a region like Rueda are two regions that almost exclusively produce white wines. And overall, the quality there is much better than the white wines that are produced in regions that are known for reds. And the last piece of advice is actually inviting you to check out another video that we made going more into detail on what the last piece of advice would be, which is to simply look for wines that use natively Spanish grapes. So we mentioned before in the video, avoiding red blends, avoiding wines that label themselves as using Cabernet Sauvignon, grapes like Merlot. Well, you want to stick to the grapes that are natively Spanish. That is a good place to start to know that you're drinking something that's representative of Spain and that's going to be a really good quality wine. So you can check that video out here, clicking on the button at the top. You can subscribe to this channel to check out more videos that we're going to produce of the same style. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and come back soon. So that's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more content on great Spanish wines.